The practice, as you know, I think most of you know, by this time it will be closed later this afternoon, and a reminder, live stream. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're moving on to South Carolina. Obviously, I have a relationship with Coach Muschamp, and they do a tremendous job over there. Watching them progress their program over the last couple years, they've gotten better with each season. You know, we had a hard battle 2 years ago on the Sunday game, and then last year's game was probably one of the most physical we played in. It was really tough, physical game, a lot of breaking of wheels when it comes to running the ball, them and us, and they've got a great special teams unit that does a tremendous job in all phases. So obviously the challenges of going to Columbia and playing, we've talked to our kids about it a lot over the summer, an opportunity to go into an environment that'll be as tough as any. As I well know, playing over there from a crowd and fan base, and it sounds like we'll also be playing the heat and the sun along with their team, which is always a challenge. So we're excited for the opportunity, got a lot of respect for their program, and ready to get to work on them.
Raise your hand if you have a question.
Kirby, after looking at the film of Saturday, how would you assess the way DeAndre, Elijah, Brian ran the ball, and what must y'all do better to have that kind of success that y'all did 2 years ago over there?
Yeah, well, first thing is we got to have some more explosive runs. In our run game, we probably have not been as explosive as we were last year, which that includes scrimmages. We didn't have the number of explosive runs you might have expected Saturday. I'm not going to say those guys ran the ball poorly. They ran the ball hard, but they probably missed the hole a couple times and probably a little impatient and sometimes staying behind their blocking schemes and trying to bounce things out when we've got to commit to keeping it inside. But they would be the first to tell you that. As a matter of fact, a couple of them came off the field and said they missed it at the time, but their effort was there. If they continue to work hard with good ball security, then we can have a positive running game.
Coach, obviously Brian McClendon is another new wrinkle in this whole thing. Were you able to learn much from the first game? And I'm just curious about you guys' personal relationship. I know you've crossed paths a few times. Yeah,
when I coached here previously under Mark Richt, Brian was a player and did a tremendous job for us. I've always had a lot of respect for him as a leader, really good recruiter, does a great job. He did a great job with receivers when he was with those guys. Now he's calling it. He called it in the bowl game, and I thought for a guy that started off slow in the bowl game, he was very patient, committed, called a great game, especially the second half, kind of won that job by the job he did, and got a great amount of respect. What we can learn from the first game, probably tough. They're not the same defensively as we are. They were able to get a lead very similar to our game, but I know he's a good football coach. I know he's got a great staff around him of other guys that we've had to compete against, and I'm sure he'll rely on those guys to help him out.
Yep. Here, knowing Will as well as you do, were you surprised when he ultimately decided to go up tempo?
No, I mean they've tempo is in every offense in America now. So for it to be involved in it, I think it's the way of the world. If you can create an advantage by going up tempo, and you have the kind of quarterback he has who can lead and coach on the field and do the things he does, I certainly think it's a big advantage. And I think you see a lot of teams out there. I think the key is, can you go up tempo and still run the ball, which they can, and that's the key to going up tempo, because up tempo does nothing if you're 3 and out. And I think he'd be the first to tell you that, and that's why they've been able to speed things up, because they've got a quarterback that can make good decisions with the ball in his hands, and he makes them right a lot of times.
Coach, one of South Carolina's most well-known weapons is Deebo Samuel at that wide receiver spot. He's a guy that came back from injury after last year and had a couple of highlight catches already. So how do y'all go about stopping a guy like that that's so dynamic? It can also play on punt return and kick return and just everything he can do.
Yeah, he's probably the most underrated player in all of college football, because I don't know that everybody in the country knows what the SEC knows about Deebo Samuel. I mean, the guy is phenomenal. When you look at what he's done, even 2 years ago, he gave us fits in that game, and then you turn around and say, okay, he has just a tough injury he has to deal with, but before he had that injury, he had some of the most electric kickoff returns in the country. You see what he's already done in this game, in one game, how explosive he's been at whether it's running back, receiver, and they're creative in ways of finding getting him the ball. I mean, he's a 10-touch guy a game, 15-touch guy a game. They're going to find ways to get him the ball through the screen game, the return game, handing it to him. An electric football player that's extremely powerful, confident, hard to tackle, and he'll be a key guy for us. You got to get him on the ground when he gets the ball, because you don't ever know when it's going to him.
Coach, what's your thoughts on the play of the offensive line this past week and the biggest challenge they're going to be facing against South Carolina?
Yeah, I didn't think that the conditioning was where it needed to be, and I told those guys that. I thought that at times they did some good things. The team they were playing was probably overmatched in a lot of the situations they were in. Pleased with assignments, pleased with communication, but be a whole new ball game this week. They're going to be playing bigger, more physical guys. It's going to be loud. They got to do a better job creating movement, and they got to do a better job of second level blocking, getting to the second level and protecting our ball carriers down the field and covering down, which takes more effort.
Kirby, I know that the calling card that you want Georgia's offense to be is physical, downhill running, but when you have the kind of speed on the edges that we all saw Saturday, how do you incorporate that? Do you change that philosophy at all?
I don't think you ever change it. I mean, whether you run the ball with a speed sweep or you run the ball with a inside zone, everybody knows in college football those plays are packaged together. So a lot of time it's what the defense gives you. I mean, these people aren't. Y'all may see it as a handoff to Demetrius Robertson, but that's not actually what the play was. The play has two options to it. So with every play, there's two plays, and usually an inside play and an outside play. That's what college football is. It might be a run, it might be a pass, it might be a handoff. But I think you use the tools you have, but you take what the defense gives you. If it gives you the outside run, then you run it outside. If they give you the inside run, then you run it inside. If they give you neither, then you got to find a way to throw the ball. We got to be good at inside, outside run and the ability to throw the ball, because it's just hard to run the ball in our conference, whether it's perimeter or inside. You've got to be able to create plays through the passing game.
Kirby, when you looked at film, how did Tyson Campbell look to you? And I guess they had to play downfield where maybe he was beat. I don't know if that was a learning experience in that play in particular.
Yeah, I don't know what play you're referring to, but he did a good job of what he was asked to do. I mean, he communicated well. I think he got settled down more as the game went on. He's got a lot of speed. He's got a lot of toughness. He's a competitor. He hadn't been in the environment he's going to be in Saturday, but I mean, a lot of teams across the country got young DB players, and the only way they grow up is to go play. So he needs to go play, and we've got other guys that can roll in and play. You know, Eric Stokes came in and played well. So did Mark Webb. So I feel a lot better about where we are at corner this year right now than I did at times in the past. Just need to go play. Those guys got to go play, and they're going to have to play well this week. Some really good wideouts.
Coach, I think you said Saturday you expected Terry back. If he does come back, what does he bring you? What does he bring the room, and how up to speed do you expect him to be, considering he hadn't played in scrimmages or a game yet?
Yeah, he's run the last few days. He's had a couple times he's come back where we thought he was going to be back, and he just hadn't been able to push it over the edge. But he was able to work out Saturday prior to the game and run, and then he was able to work out some yesterday. And we're expecting him to go out there today and do a lot more. So we're expected to get him back, but I won't know that until later in the week. But what he brings is some experience and some confidence. He's got a really good feel with the quarterbacks. He's got a lot of experience. I mean, he understands the game. He's a really good route runner, and he's got great hands. So for us, that value of confidence of having an extra guy, it frees up some other guys to play on special teams when Terry's able to eat up some of the reps out there on offense.
Kirby, a couple of the players after the game Saturday said that what they went through last year at Notre Dame, second game of the year, first big road trip, they can maybe draw from some of that experience. I know you've got some new kids that weren't a part of that, but I was curious if you felt the same way. And also, because this is such a big league game, do you ever bring up the fact that if you lose this, they've got to lose twice? I know with Alabama, a couple of years late there, Ole Miss got you, and you had to have them lose twice, and it worked out for you. But do you discuss that aspect to it, or do they already know?
Yeah, I don't compare this to Notre Dame because our fan base felt like 50% of the fan base. It won't be that way in Columbia, let me assure you, okay? Their fan base will be turned out and have a lot of people there. So that environment probably is not a good analogy for what we're going into, because I know I've been there there, I understand. Not a lot of our guys have, because the last time we played there was a Sunday. But all things considered, that's not what's important for our team. What's important for our team is how we practice today, how they listen to the scouting report, and what they prepare for. You guys are focused on the game. We're focused on today, trying to get ready for practice.
Coach, what's going to be the biggest challenge of coming up with the right 70-man roster to travel to Columbia for this contest?
The biggest challenge would probably be figuring out the injuries with some guys, because if one guy can't go here, then you got to take 2 extra guys there, and making sure that Kieris and Jason are good to go, who were not really cleared to play the other day. We're trying to get those guys back. That's probably the toughest thing, is just being able to foresee the injuries and who gets the reps to decide. And a lot of that will be determined by special teams for us.
Obviously, you mentioned Debo. They have more than him. Obviously, Brian Edwards and some other guys. What that entire wide receiver group from South Carolina, what kind of challenge does that present beyond, obviously, their star in Debo? Yeah,
physical. They're big. They're physical. They throw the ball vertically down the field. I think Jake Bentley does a tremendous job of throwing the touch passes, throwing fade routes, throwing vertical patterns, and they catch them at a high percentage. I think you look back over the last few games, they've hit a lot of those long balls, and they've got big wide outs to do it with. And they're committed to the run game to the point where you can't sit there and cover up the pass the whole time. So they take their shots, you got to cover them, and it'll be the same way for them against us. I mean, it's a game can be a simple game when you get down to it. You got to make plays when you get an opportunity.
Kirby, you mentioned early this season y'all have been in search of your leaders for this year's team. How much closer did you get to learning who those leaders are, and how important will that be going on the road to a hostile environment on Saturday?
Yeah, I think those guys start to come to the forefront as you get adversity. We didn't have a lot of adversity Saturday, but leading up to the week practice, there's guys starting to rear their heads, guys that practice hard all the time, guys that step up and speak after practice or speak, before the game. I think we're starting to get some guys to show some of those qualities, but it's the same guys you would expect. And that's what we expect, and we want to continue to develop that. But a lot of that true leadership doesn't show until things get tough.
Kirby, just curious what you got out of Jake Amar's performance on Saturday, and how big is that going to be going into an SEC game?
Yeah, I think it's good to get a game under his belt. He's a tremendous talent. He works hard day in and day out. He probably had some adrenaline pumping, and he launched a couple that ended up going in the end zone, but it's hard to predict from how far he was punting it that was going to happen. I just hope, given the opportunity to do some sky kicks, he can do it with good percentages of getting them down like Cam did. Those probably weren't fair to judge him off of, because we weren't telling him to sky those.
Mentioned Brian McClendon, obviously going to offense coordinator in your relationship with him. Is that a guy that you've stayed in touch with over the years? And when he was making that transition, from the interim to becoming full-time, that's someone you talked to. Did he reach out to you at all during that time?
No, not really. I mean, I talk to Will periodically, and I've worked with Lance a long time. I know a lot of guys on their staff, but B-Mac's probably closer to Bobo and some of those guys that he's worked with longer. But I have a lot of respect for B-Mac. I see him a lot of times on the road recruiting.
Coach, when you were a player, South Carolina was always the first conference game on week 1 or week 2. The rivalry's grown a lot since then. Do you think sort of the significance of this game has grown even more than it did back when you were a player?
They're all significant. That's all I can say. They're all significant.
Coach, I think you referred to the front 7 as a committee a lot in fall drills. Can you assess how they played in that opener and some thoughts about moving forward in that front 7?
Probably didn't get tested. I mean, to be dead honest with you, probably didn't get tested. And I know it's easy to say that now, but, that's not the caliber of offensive line we're going to have to face. And I got a lot of respect for Austin Peay and the job their coach does, and their kids play really hard. But we know that we're going to face a bigger, heavier, quicker person, and we're going to have to play better. For what we asked them to do, you can't say the kids didn't play hard. They played hard, ran to the ball. We didn't play with real good technique all the time, and it will continue to be a committee, because the committee and the defensive front in the SEC is you got to play a lot of people, especially against a team that goes up tempo.
Do you guys talk about targeting like on a weekly basis, or how much do you do a reinforcement after what happened with James?
Well, we try to reinforce it every opportunity we get. When we have a learning opportunity from an opponent that has one, or we have one come up in practice, we show it to the team. We have a SEC official that comes in and speaks to the team in the preseason, does a tremendous job showing do's and don'ts and not leading with the head. And I don't think you can do enough education on that. But our biggest education is when we have something in practice, we show it in a team meeting that, hey, this is not how we want to practice. It's not safe for you, also not safe for the guy opposite that. And I think James understands that. I mean, his intent was not to be violent and hurt somebody. He's a freshman that made a mistake, and we'll learn a valuable lesson from it.
Kirby, you mentioned about Debo being underrated. It seems like a lot of times when you talk about quarterbacks in this league, you hear about Stidham and Locke and Jake. But what do you like about what Bentley does for them?
The leader. I mean, he understands the game. There's games that I've watched him play over the years. It seems like 30 games now I've seen the kid in the game, understand it, whether it's on TV or watching him on tape. Comes down to a 2-minute situation. He's like having a coach on the field. He's more athletic than you give him credit for. He scrambles for first downs when things are covered. He handles well. He knows where to go with the ball. He's unbelievable in the RPO game. I mean, he's a really good quarterback. And as a offensive coordinator, it's a lot easier to call the game when you've got a guy that you know makes good decisions with the ball, and that's what he does best.
Coach, I want to ask you about Channing Tindall, with him being a guy from the Columbia area that you guys were able to play this past off season. I mean, can you kind of recall anything, I guess, about the recruitment and going to Columbia, I suppose, and kind of just being able to land him over on other schools, and then also if he is able to travel, I mean, what does that mean in order for him to go back home and play in front of his family and everything?
Yeah, I think it's special anytime you go back home and get to play in front of your hometown or your family, and that's a special moment for him. His recruitment was a long process. He handled it the right way. He communicated throughout. He took a lot of visits, but I think a lot of him as a kid, his family is a great family. I've enjoyed getting to know them, recruited him in Columbia, and he's an exciting player. He's got to grow up and mature and learn some things, but as far as competitor, toughness, effort on the field, he gives that, and he's really fast. And speed is hard to coach, and he continues to grow as a player, and we're trying to develop him because we think he's really talented.
2 more questions?
Kirby, I guess I'll be the one to ask about the quarterbacks this week. I guess Justin came in 4th series or so and then played a good bit. Is there a plan per se for him, or will Jake start and then the game will dictate what you do after that?
The later, for sure. It's just a situation where there's no plan. You know, we got to go with how things go and how the flow of the game goes. And I thought he did a good job Saturday in the game, handled things well. But I don't know what this game's going to dictate, what this game's going to bring. So we'll see.
Last question, anybody? All right.
At this time last year, you guys were getting ready for Notre Dame. You didn't really know what you would see from Fromm. He stepped up to the plate. On Saturday, Fromm was asked, hey, have you talked to Fields at all about handling such a big environment? Have you heard them speak at all about it? Have you heard Fromm give him any advice for Saturday's game?
No, I've not been privy to any of those conversations, but I know all camp they room together and they're around each other every day in meetings, but I'm not privy to their conversations among each other. But they're both great kids. They're both UGA fans. They both pull for us, and they compete hard against each other, but they're pulling the team in the right direction. That's one thing I'll say about both those kids. They just want to make our team better, and they've done that by how they've competed. Thanks.